Paul's hardships reveal the true essence of apostolic character amidst modern facades.
Reading the letter of Philippians, well, he said, hey, we were insulted in Philippi. And we suffered and been insulted in Philippi, as you know. But with the help of our God, we dared to tell you his gospel in spite of strong opposition. So again, you're hearing about suffering. You're hearing about persecution. You're hearing about opposition. These are some of the things that Paul the apostle went through. So now I want you to, as I read this, I want you to look at some of the things the apostles went through, but also the attitude and the characteristics and character of an apostle. And does it match some of these so-called apostles out there today? You'll see it's vastly, vastly different. Right? You know, brothers, that our visit to you was not a failure. We had previously suffered and been insulted in Philippi, as you know. But with the help of our God, we dared to tell you his gospel in spite of strong opposition. For the appeal we make does not spring from error or impure motives, nor are we trying to trick you. See, I could stop right there. There's a whole lot of people. There's a whole lot of pastors, false prophets, and whatnot are trying to trick people. On the contrary, we speak as men approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel. We are not trying to please men, but God. Remember, Paul said the very same thing in his letter to the Galatians. Remember, he said, should we please men or please God? And he said, we should please God. And therefore, and not please men. Amen. Well, there's a lot of men pleasers in these so-called networking preaching circles. All they want to do is hobnob to the latest celebrity rock star pastor so they can become the next big thing. You'll see that a lot, and that's why they want to be on TBN, and that's why they want to be on Daystar, and that's why they want to be on these so-called Christian networks, even though a lot of them aren't Christian at all. They're just a den of wolves is what they are. But they want to be on these Daystars and TBNs so they can be the next big thing. So they're not trying to please God in the grand spectrum of things. They're pleasing men and they're pleasing themselves so they can be the next thing. Amen. So, yeah, we'll get to that, Vaughn. Later in this letter, Paul uses the expression, God did not appoint us to wrath, 1 Thessalonians 5:9, to refer to God's deliverance of his people in the context of the wrath to come upon the world. Yep. We were bold in our God to speak. It comes from two words, meaning literally all speech. It denotes the state of mind when the words flow freely, the attitude of feeling quite at home with no stress. Well, I need to get that. I need to get that. Pray for me on that because I need to arrive. I haven't arrived on that yet, everybody. All right. So let's continue reading here. Again, but note the attitude and character of the apostles here. So we are not trying to please men, but God, who tests our hearts. You know, we never use flattery nor did we put on a mask to cover up greed. Nor did we put on a mask to cover up greed. Hello, prosperity gospel preachers out there. Okay. God is our witness. We were not looking for praise from men, not from you or anyone else. As apostles of Christ, we could have been a burden to you, talking about receiving financial support. But he says, no, we didn't do that. But we were gentle among you, like a mother caring for her little children, i.e., they're not narcissistic. They're not egotistical. They're not conceited. They're not, to your point, Vaughn, they're not covetousness. They're not financially greedy. Self-seeking of all types, a quest for anything that brings self-satisfaction. It grows out of a complete disinterest in the rights of others. Yeah. A lot of these pastors out there today and so-called prophets out there today, Vaughn, that's exactly what they are. They're covetous, they're greedy, they're narcissistic, they're egotistical. It's all about them. They don't care about others. They only care about themselves. They only care about building their own brand, their own marketing, their own empires. And they're using the church to do it. They just learn to build their own empire using the pyramid scheme in the church. And that's what they've done. Well, the apostles, in his writing, Apostle Paul is like a true apostle. Is supposed to be like none of that. It's about Christ and not them. Remember what Paul said to the Philippian church? And remember in the letter of Philippians, he said, I consider my life to be poured out as a drink offering, as a sacrifice unto the Lord. He said, I consider my life as a drink offering to be poured out as a sacrifice. That was his attitude. They were servant leaders. Exactly, Believe in Hope. That's exactly what they were. Unlike a lot of leaders today, they want people to serve them. Totally foreign to what the Apostle Paul was talking about. Totally opposite of what the Apostle Paul was talking about. As apostles of Christ, we could have been a burden to you, but we were gentle among you. So there's gentleness, not, haughtiness and lording over people. It's not how they did it. But we were gentle among you, like a mother caring for her little children. We love you so much that we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well, because you had become so dear to us. Surely you remember, brothers, our toil and hardship. We worked night and day in order not to be a burden to anyone while we preached the gospel of God to you. Remember I read to you the background. Paul was a tent maker, and that's how he made his living, and that's how he made his money. And he's like, I'm doing that so that way I'm not a burden to you guys, right? And when you read the letter of 1 Corinthians, when we ever get to that, he even says that he's like, I could have received from you, but I'm not going to do it. And he said, why? That way y'all can't say, Paul is getting rich off you guys. He's like, no. I made tents. I made my money from my own hands. That way y'all can't say that I'm getting rich because of y'all. So Paul is like, look, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to work myself. That way y'all can't say I'm getting rich off you. Amen. He says, you are witnesses, and so is God, of how holy, righteous, and blameless we were among you who believed. For you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God, who calls you into his kingdom and glory. I love what he says there. He says, first of all, as a father, encouraging, comforting, and urging, not lording over them and having like dominion over them like some narcissist, right? It's not what you see in a lot of churches and pastors today. And secondly, then he says, urging you to live lives worthy of God. That sounds a lot like what he said into the Philippians, doesn't it? Because remember in the Philippians, in the letter of the Philippians, he said, basically carry yourselves in such a way in Philippians 1:27 to live your lives are worthy of the calling that you have. So he's kind of saying the same thing here to the Thessalonians.